It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Freeman Michaels here with my co-host Barnet Bain.
Hey, good to see you.
So
Nice
we
to
want
see
to
this
talk
morning.
a little bit today about balancing looking forward with looking back. Now, a lot of people, and us included, have spent a lot of time picking up the pieces. And while we recognize picking up the fragments, the pieces from our past, making sense of them, and so forth, healing and what have you, it's just as important to have a sense of vision of where we're going.
And it's we're habituated not to do it, so it's a little harder. It requires more focus. It's, you know, when you tap your knee and it kind of jerks up, you have to put your attention on it so it doesn't jerk up. I know when we were talking earlier about, well, what are we going to talk about on the podcast today?
And we track back.
We track back. It's
Yeah,
like, well,
we know
let's
the
talk
map.
about this. Let's talk about what we already know. And
Yeah.
it's such an instinctive response. We'll talk about what we already know. Let's look back. Let's look at what we can reaffirm, and to get perspective and to say, well, let's go into what we don't know. Let's explore what we don't know. Well, that's scary. There's all sorts of resistance that comes up. Well, but we don't know where we're going, and how do we know that we'll get anywhere? And what if the show is a failure? And what if we look like we're rambling or it doesn't look very good?
Well, we've risked that. I'm not patting ourselves on the back, but we've risked that from the minute one. We said that part of getting to the edge of possibility is being willing to step up to where we don't know. And yet, one of the things we've talked about is we can imagine. And we can imagine based on a series of qualities that we know we want to promote. And these are things that one of the basis, people don't know this behind the scenes, but when you and I first agreed to do this show nearly 2 years ago, come up on 2 years in July, we said the primary thing is it has to be fun. So we knew we were promoting that quality. And there's a series of qualities that are really rudimentary, and that then we can begin to imagine what would be expressions of that, what would be expressions of that, how would we like to craft with that? Boy, that would be fun. Let's try that then. And that's a guiding principle, if you will, that we can find expression for, conscious expression for, moment to moment, that begins to propel our life forward into something yet unknown, but the qualities we're trying to promote, and we're teasing out, and we're expressing, and we're doing this again consciously, that is exciting.
Yeah, and to have this this weather vane, to have this this star to navigate by, it says, well, it has to be fun. Has to be about what can we learn, not so much about what we can reaffirm, and where are we going to, more than where we've come from, and also what can we give, more so than what can we get. Not to say that I have a problem getting. I love to get.
Right.
But there's a little balance in the scale, in the measuring of that. Adding more and more weight incrementally onto what I can give.
Right.
I'm not going to bypass all of my vanities and all of my ego stuff and say, I'm all about giving.
But that all
more and
comes
more,
too.
one grain at a time. It all comes too, but one grain at a time.
Yeah.
I'm able to choose. I can give a little more. I can give a little more, and then suddenly it tips over from 49.51 to 51.49, and life starts to look really different. So what can we give more than what can we get? And those qualities have served us really well on this show. Sometimes
Plus or minus some wandering.
yeah, well, when you don't really know when you're making a map for ourselves, we don't really know exactly where we're going.
Absolutely.
There's sometimes we find ourselves doubling back over comfy terrain,
And part of that, which has been beautiful, is that we've gotten to pick up the pieces. You know, I recently expressed this, that part of the process of integrating the fragments meant expressing them. And in expressing them, it felt so good that I began to express them more and more. And I surrounded myself with a lot of people where the agreement, the unconscious agreement, was we're going to express the fragments. And we referred to this in the past as dented can syndrome, where we end up promoting the dented can. Myself.
It crosses.
Yeah.
Just to elaborate on that, the line crosses from a self-exploration that is vulnerable enough to acknowledge there's power in the telling,
right,
and in the sharing and in the witnessing. But then we realize, wow, I'm getting strokes for that.
Right. Well,
so now it becomes a shtick. I just continue to be so incredibly vulnerable. It's a new kind of manipulation.
Yeah, and it's tricky because, while my commitment to being vulnerable and showing up in the world is sincere, I can see where I find myself pandering to the parts of to the affirmation I've gotten for doing that.
It becomes the familiar trail. Now we have a new loop. Go around that loop.
There's been an expression for this. I mean, the idea of wound mates, right? We see this
what's that called?
Wound mates.
Wound mates.
Yeah, like that people actually. So what happens is this, and I've done this. Definitely after my first marriage broke up, I was in this place of experiencing all of the ways that it went wrong, and I was really in this sort of honest opening, this ultra honesty, which actually became a manipulation. Similar to what you're talking about. And what I was looking to have happen was I was looking for someone who would love me for my brokenness. Now, that's a bad bargain. If I'm out in the world trying to be loved for, or even in spite of my brokenness, that's not really what I want to bond over, right? Mm-hmm. And so what ends up happening is I was inviting in turmoil that was not required. I mean, yes, in going for what we want, we will have to, face up to the resistance and the trailing bits that come along.
And then bring it.
Yeah, but you bring them with you with where you want to go.
Yeah.
And this is the heart of what we're trying to say, is that we have to have a vision for where we're going. And then in that process, will there be, bits and pieces of the fragments that show up and become, in essence, obstacles or even become just alternative ways to move through and into what we want. That's fine.
And
but in the context of where we're going.
How quickly can we identify those fragments?
Versus identify with those fragments.
Yeah, versus relate to them.
Right.
Or relate to them as opposed
versus
to be identified
yes,
with
yes.
them. Yeah.
Because we don't want to be identified with the part of me that's broken. I want to hold that part with a level of compassion,
and
but I'd like to move
fast.
forward. Yeah, well, that's what's happened for us in our own experience, is that we've been able to integrate. Integrity, again, is that level of integration
How
where we allow
quickly you
for...
can see who's grabbed the wheel.
That's right.
And talk them down and love them and move them back into the bus.
But where are we aiming? What vision? What are we imagining? What are we creating for ourselves and generating in the choices we make is a huge, huge piece of the puzzle.
So there's two things that come to mind for me when you say that, and one of them is hope. We can talk about what hope is to many things, including it's a bridge from towards our heart's desire, from the place where we think we are distant from it. It is a bridge.
Beautiful.
It's also a harbinger. It's a harbinger of the heart's desire. So it's many things. There's also humility. And in this context that we're talking about, humility for me has a slightly different twist to it. It's an understanding that even though things have always appeared to come down in a particular way, I am humble enough to accept that in the very next moment it could all change.
Yeah.
That I am not so righteously aligned to my point of view that I lose the humility for something graceful to happen, that even though all crows that I've experienced have always been black, the next moment I could see a white one.
Right. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And this, again, is peeling back layers of protection, the way that we've assigned our world to look a certain way. And when it doesn't, we find ourselves in, and I recently wrote about this, in that kind of, that dissonance where we're going, how do I sort this out? And as we've said before, the idea is to allow for it to be, that to have contradicting aspects and stand in the middle of that and go, oh, okay, these are all aspects of me I'm hearing from in various arenas. So to keep opening to possibility, keep risking the reservation, risking the known to step into the unknown is quite a powerful
But you have to
process.
know your reservation to step off
the
it.
piece. Yeah, and that's
that's
the
so
part.
much of a lot of what we have focused on over the last year and a half on the show is knowing our own reservation.
Yep.
Knowing the boundaries of possibility that we have created for ourselves, although much of the time we've thought that they were so-called facts of the world. You know, that there's such a thing as outside authority,
Right.
and outside laws, and we've existed inside these laws and rules on something that we've called the reservation. And to step off it, you really have to know it. It's like, in order to give away the pink slip to my car, I have to own the car.
Mm.
So that's been important. But once you step off the reservation, you're really making a map. Suddenly there's no path to follow. And it's unfamiliar and awkward.
I love it. That's the beauty of the work, is to get to the place where we're willing to risk knowing.
And you have nothing from past experience to guide you except those values,
Right.
and accept those desires and expectations, and the trust that you have in something that exists beyond your own experience.
You know what I love about, we're going to wrap the show up, and what I love about it
This is a quickie.
well, it's okay. It's so incomplete, and that's so perfect. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just...
Well, we hope that people will come back and pick it up where we've left off. We hope that we pick it up where we've left off.
And the offer is to pick it up wherever it leaves off for you. That
Beautiful.
The idea that we have a sense of something, but we really don't know, is a generous offer. And with that...
This show's a Rorschach test, is what you're saying.
With that, we offer to you to share this little tidbit. And
Have a
it's
great
just a little
week,
tidbit.
everyone.
And keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.